couple of years ago I did a couple of videos on these elves or gnomes. More recently they tend to be commonly called gonks. So I came up with my own design of a gonk that I call Brother John. This is a fast, fun, easy project that your friends and family are going to love. Let's get started. Okay, we're going to start with a piece of wood about 1.25, about 1.5 by 1.5 by 3 3/4, which is just about the size of scrap of 2 by 4, which is what this is. Pine is not a bad wood for this project. By putting it in here square, you can probably hold this with your normal jaws. Kind of get it kind of squared up as best you can. Clamp it down pretty good. By doing it that way, we won't have any damage here on the end with the tailstock. We want a smooth surface here for Brother John's chrome dome. Bring up our tool rest, tighten everything down, turn it, make sure it turns. Looks like it's pretty close to parallel. So we're ready to go. First thing we're going to do is turn this around. We're going to use a spindle roughing gouge. So we're going to turn this thing on. We're going to turn it at fairly high speed, maybe a couple of thousand. This is a small piece of wood. It's held fairly well, and if it flies, it's going to fly away from us because of the angle we're cutting. Don't press real hard. Anchor the tool, ride the bevel, lift it in until it cuts. We're going to come over here and take a peeling cut. Okay, now I'm going to turn Brother John's head. First thing I'm going to do, though, is I'm going to take a nice peeling cut here, and I want to slice the fiber. So to do that, I'm going to start with a skew just to slice through the fibers. Now we're going to take a 3/8 inch spindle gouge. It's not perfectly round yet, so we need to work on that a little bit more, but meanwhile I'm going to go ahead and continue with this chrome dome. We're just going to anchor the tool, ride the bevel, pick up the cut, gradually bring it around. It's just a big bead. Try to take one continuous pass to minimize the tool marks, but you certainly will have an opportunity to sand through all those. Alright, so I've got a nice round surface. Now I'm going to come down here and about a 1/16 of an inch. We can do this with several tools. I'm going to use my beading and parting tool. You want to come, make this up a little bit, you want to come straight in because you've got to slice through those fibers. Actually, by coming in here with a skew, I've sliced the fiber, so I can actually come on down here. I think it'd take a peeling cut without any problem. I'm going to anchor the tool, ride the bevel, and lift the handle till it cuts. Come down just enough that's going to cover the edge of that fur, and I think that'll probably do it. Now this, we can go ahead and take the rest of this down to that same size. Now I'm going to take a spindle gouge to kind of clean that up a little bit. Anchor the tool, ride the bevel. I'm going to pull this forward, almost slicing with it at a 45-degree angle here. It's almost cutting it like a skew. Now, this is all going to get hidden by fur, so it's not going to make a whole heck of a lot of difference. I'm going to keep it kind of a uniform size and try to get the finish as good as I can. Now, I'm not going to bother to sand it because it's not going to need it. Now, we're going to drill a hole, and I'm going to decide whether the grain makes any difference. I'm going to have this go in this way, and we're going to mark this where we're going to drill with a awl. And I could measure it, but I know that nose is going to be almost a 1/2 inch, and that's a good 3/8 inch away. So we're not going to have any problem there. Next thing I want to decide, is he left-handed, Brother John, or right-handed? I'm going to make him right-handed like most of us, so this is going to be a nose, and we're going to bring this down with this parallel with the floor. And then we're going to come down here just a little ways, and we're going to drill another hole here for his arm. And that's just a starter hole. Now let me go get a drill and let's drill those holes. Now the size drill bit you drill these holes with is nothing particularly special. I like 3/16 of an inch. You could make it 1/4 of an inch. Somewhere around 5 millimeters is probably good. So we're going to come in and drill perpendicular straight up for his arm. These drill bit needs sharpening. Okay. Then we're going to come in here and drill a hole for his nose. I got a friend of mine with a drill sharpening system I need to go visit. Okay, I've got these holes drilled. Next thing we're going to do is go ahead and sand this off, part this off, and we'll be done with this part. I'm going to slow the speed down for sanding to about 1/3 of what I was turning at. We're going to start off with a fairly coarse grit to get it round. This is maybe 100 millimeter, but 100 grit, but it really doesn't matter. It's whatever works for you. We sand through all the grits. Now, we don't want his chrome dome too shiny. We could probably leave it with that little bit of wax we put on there, but next step, only of course use some abrasive paste because we want this thing just as smooth looking as we can. So I'm going to use some of my shop-made abrasive paste. I've got a video on this up here somewhere. Click on the eye, learn how to make this stuff. Alright, we're just going to put it on. Normally I stop the lathe with something this small, it doesn't really matter. And this really, in effect, takes that last grit, 320, and pretty much doubles the effectiveness of it. So I wind up with a finish that I would have had to go up to 600 or 800 grit to get to. Now I could leave that as a finish with that wax finish, and it wouldn't look too bad, but I want to go ahead and make this super shiny, so I'm going to use a friction polish. I'm going to use some Shella wax, but you could use crystal, or you can use OB shine juice, or Mylan's, which is what I usually use, but this Shella wax sample works pretty good. We're just going to rub that in and then polish it up. Shiny, shiny, shiny. This will do it. And we can go ahead and part this off. I'm going to use a thin parting tool. This is a 1/16 of an inch. I normally use a different one, but this one is fluted. I don't use it too often, but it does leave a finer cut. I'm going to come in there and slightly undercut it just a little bit so this will stand on a counter. Take another cut. So now I'm going to grab this with my hand like this. Slow the speed down to about 1,000. And there we go. Now, I'll probably take this over the belt sander and get rid of that little nib. But even faster than that, these aren't works of art. I'm going to use this piece of MDF with 120 grit on it. And that'll pretty well get rid of it. These are some, you want to maybe produce a bunch of them, so you want a way to do it fast. You don't have to be perfect. These sell in the U.S. for somewhere, I think maybe $25 to $35. So we're going to set this aside. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to work on his nose. Now, typically for a project like this, I would use a small set of jaws like this. But I know most of you guys out there, especially you fairly new turners, haven't completely acquired your full kit, may not have smaller jaws. So let me show you another way to do that. We're going to use the jaw glides. We're going to remove the jaws from your normal jaws, and these glides are fairly thick. If you can see here on the top, right here. So the thickness of those jaw glides are somewhere around 5/8 of an inch, which for something this small, somewhere around, a half an inch or so ought to do fine, because the glides. So you can see you've got 4 opposing flat surfaces, and we're just going to register those flat surfaces on here. We're going to push it back a little ways until it stops, and clamp down on it pretty good. Now we've got a real strong hold for something that doesn't stick out that far, so this should be just fine. So we're going to go ahead and turn the, I said nose. I think first thing we're going to do is probably turn the arm, and we want this thing to be about, we want this to be about 1 1/8 inch long, with a small tenon on it. So we'll make it, say, we're going to call it 1.5 inches. Again, using the spindle roughing gouge, anchor the tool, ride the bevel. Anchor the tool, ride the bevel. Don't press too hard. Let the tool wood come to the tool. Make nice slice and cut. First thing we're going to do is make a tiny little tenon, 3/16 of an inch. I'm going to use this skew just because it happens to be handy. Now, we probably ought to have a good way to measure that. If you've got a tiny little wrench appropriate to your drill bit, this is the fastest and easiest way to do it. This one's a bit oversized, but it'll get me pretty close. So let's go ahead and turn a fist. So we're going to start it right here, end it right there. That's a little bit large. We want the fist to be about 3/8 of an inch, so all it's got to be taken down. Now, I need to make the fist, so I need to take his arm down a little bit. So we're just going to make a ball here on the end. Probably do it. Now we need to go ahead and drill a hole for Brother John's sign, and for that I'm going to use a bamboo skewer, and we're going to measure that. And what I found, the fastest way to get the appropriate drill bit size is just find the right hole. And what tends to work is 3/32 tends to be pretty close. So we're going to drill a hole for that bamboo skewer. We're just going to mark it with, again, with the awl, birdcage awl. Got a great video on that. If you're not familiar with a birdcage awl, check it out, because it will really cut a fine hole. So we're just going to come in here and drill that hole. Let's go ahead and sand it off. Again, starting with maybe 150. It could be a little rough. Brother John's a little rough. He's out there eating locusts and honey out in the wild. Come in here, slow and easy. Have my finger over it to kind of control a little bit, because once I remove some of this wood, I'm just going to reach over here. I'm not going to grab it, that'll tear the fibers. I want it pointed, so I'm going to take the end off a little bit. Slowly, and slice away. And there we go. Okay, I've drilled a slightly larger hole. It's still a fairly nice friction fit, so drop a CA in there. We'll trim that off and it'll work just fine. I need just a bit more wood. We've got it crammed down pretty far down in the chuck, past where the jaws are even holding it. So I'm just going to loosen that up a little bit. You can see, I think you can, let me get a close-up, you can see how well it's holding. See that impression? That's the impression of the jaws. So you can see I've got, a good ½ inch I can move it out and still have that same good hold. So we're just going to bring it out about there. So let's come down. Use my little gauge. It's a little on the large side, but lets me know I'm pretty doggone close. Round this over. Big bead, swing the handle around, swing it around, swing it around. So when we finish this big bead, this is 90 degrees to the wood. And let's knock off a little bit there. Over here. 150 grit. We're going to skip the 180, jump to 240. Now let's go ahead and finish parting it off. I'm going to use this beading and parting tool because I think I can get a better slice and cut here. You can use a spindle gouge. And pour it off for about 1,000. I'm going to slice away from those nose fibers so we don't get tear out. Skew would actually be better for this. Hit the floor. Okay, let's go find it. If it was me in my shop doing this, I'd probably put this in a collet chuck on the lathe to finish the end of it, but let me show you a way you could do it. Just chuck it up in your drill chuck and hold it against, one hand. Polish that nose up. Get rid of the sharp point. And that nose will fit in there. Good. There's a little gap. That's okay because there's going to be fur there. So there we go. We'll talk about fur. Let's go ahead and cut this off. I like to use a pair of sharp little small pliers. I want it a little bit taller than Brother John. And you don't, whoa, that's just wood. We know it's about that tall. We don't want to clip it or leave these fibers kind of rough, so we just kind of spin it around as we clamp and continue to clamp down. And then we'll get to a point where it's sliced through those outer fibers, kind of like a parting tool. Then we can cut it, and those it will be fairly intact on the end there. And you can make your little sign to go on here. It says repent. I'd use a lines away. We just write what I'm going to put on here. Repent. That's what Brother John's all about. Exclamation mark. Okay, we've got to put some faux fur on this Brother John Gonk. Faux fur is something you can get typically at a fabric shop in the U.S., such as Joann's. Favorite place for me is Hobby Lobby. That was very convenient. And you can get it in different colors. I think for this particular Gonk, gray or brown, possibly even white might work. You can get this in as little as 1/8 of a yard. The other possibility is you go on Amazon and get a remnant bag such as this. I'll have a link to one of these in my Amazon shop in the show notes. So this is a possibility if you can do a lot of Gonks and want a lot of different colors. Okay, so we're going to disassemble Brother John. First thing we're going to do, we want to measure how long it is. And this looks like 2 1/4. So we'll measure the length of this to just a bit less than that because the fur is going to hang over. So we're going to cut it at, say, 2 inches. So I'll mark that like that. Now, with this fur, if you can cut it 2 ways. You can either cut it with a pair of scissors, but you've got to kind of sneak it in and kind of glide it along to separate the fur. If you're not careful, you will snip off the long fur, and we don't want to do that. The other possibility is just simply use a craft knife very lightly, and that's what I'm going to use on this cutting mat. So we're just going to open this up just a little bit here. And then we're just going to gradually slice along this line with a sharp craft knife. I like this particular one. I think it's a Fiskars. I've got it in my Amazon store. If you don't have a nice craft knife, this is a nice one. Kind of like an X-Acto knife. but I like the fit of this one. Okay, so now we've got our 2-inch strip. Now the next thing we've got to do is measure how long it needs to be. The easiest way to do that is just take a piece of paper, strip of paper, or cardboard like this. Okay. So now we're going to cut that length, and then I'm going to lay that here on our piece of fur, and I'm going to do a full body wrap on Brother John. And then I'm going to again show you the technique of gliding along with the scissors. You just slip it in here below the fur, just kind of bring the fur away where it's kind of matted a little bit maybe. And then we're just going to ease this in between by just gliding it along between the fur. This is easier said than done, but you know, you'll develop your own technique. Okay, and so I've got a lot of nice overlapping fur, so that'll work fine. We can do that here. Okay, we're going to fold this over until the ends touch. That'll put this in the middle of the nose, and then we're going to come around here and just put that where the nose is. We'll know where to cut the hole. A couple of ways to do this. If you want to see a ton of other ways based on suggestions on these earlier 2 videos, you might want to check out the videos, or the link to these earlier videos. There are a wide variety of suggestions, some of them quite elaborate, requiring purchase of other tools, and a number of comments from what I think are probably engineers that might tend to overthink the solution. So let me show you an easy way to cut the hole for the nose. After you fold this over, we're simply, some folks cut a V-slot there, but I find if you just snip this thing with a pair of scissors, do a real close up here, and cut that tiny little hole, that'll take care of it. And then come in from behind to kind of open up that hole, then come in from the other direction, and we're going to use that to kind of anchor this as we glue it. And this will work just great. That tends to anchor it in place. Now we need to come up with a similar solution for the arm. So what I'm going to do for that is reach for an awl to poke a hole through it. So I'm just going to approximate where that is and poke a hole. Actually, let me show you a better way. We're going to use a marker. We're going to mark where that hole is. And then I think the easiest way to probably do it is use the craft knife and do a horizontal slicing cut, and that'll give you room to relocate that arm just a little bit. So we'll just do a little slice, maybe 1/4 inch across. Get in there. So yeah, now all we got to do is glue it. Now there's several techniques for glue. I'm not going to spend time actually gluing this in front of you. Some folks have had some success using medium CA. Me, not so much. Some folks have had good luck with hot melt glue. That can work. The other glue that I want to mention is Aleene's original tacky glue works real well. It's tacky, it sets pretty fast. It's not real liquidy, so it won't flow through the fur like the CA glue. And you can get this at your hobby shop, Michael's, Hobby Lobby. I've even found it at the Dollar Tree. I have some links to a couple of the earlier videos that show a lot more alternative tricks and techniques, and it'd be helpful for you to look at the comments there. So if you're interested, the link to those will be here and also in the show notes. If you get excited about turning gonks, be sure to check out the Facebook page for All Tina's Fault. I'll have that in the show notes. At any given time, if you want to see anything on Facebook, I know some of y'all may not have a Facebook page, may not have a Facebook account, may not want to get onto Facebook, but trust me, it's an open social media. You don't have to have a page. You can go to that, click on that link. You just won't be able to make comments, but you can look at it and see the great ideas, the creative ideas that many people have had for those various gonks. And just remember, Y'all stay safe. Come on back here.